Facing a repossession. Then this video might provide you some assistance. Many people going through tough times, not only do they have to pay rent and or mortgage, but they also have car payments they have to make, provide for their daily nutritional sustenance, take care of their family, clothe themselves. They also have other necessities and essentials. This communication is designed to provide some assistance, especially for those who are facing repossession of their home and or their automobile. The first thing you must do is write off all of your debt. This means all the car payments you've made on that vehicle, the mortgage payments made, the insurance payments made on vehicles, homes, anything, medical bills, medical expenses including prescriptions and other medications, fuel costs. Look over your debit card and write off all of the fuel and other expenses for your necessities. You must document this by putting together a simple financial statement, categorize everything, document it. You can use OpenAI's ChatGPT to create such a statement. After you've documented your expenses, you're simply going to fill out our IRS 1099-C, known as a cancellation of debt form. Why? In 1933, the United States government entered into a deal with the people of America known as the New Deal. In the New Deal, the United States Congress stated that it had provided for the exchange of your promissory notes, drafts, bills of exchange, bankers' acceptances that are delivering to the Federal Reserve the issuance of Federal Reserve notes. Here's a quote. We have provided that any notes, drafts, bills of exchange, or bankers' acceptances acquired by Federal Reserve banks may be deposited with the Treasurer of the United States or with the Federal Reserve agents, and upon these securities Federal Reserve Bank notes may be issued. That means they have accepted responsibility for all promissory notes, drafts, bills of exchange, bankers' acceptances, and trade acceptances. Since they have not carried out their responsibility, simply forgive them by filling out the 1099-C. You are the creditor, they are the borrower in this scenario. How are you the creditor? Simple, they are the ones said that they have provided a procedure for discharging your promissory notes. We have provided that any notes, drafts, bills of exchange, or bankers' acceptances acquired by Federal Reserve banks may be deposited with the Treasurer of the United States or with the Federal Reserve agents, and upon these securities, do you see? They have made provisions or have provided, and that's where Section 414 of the Federal Reserve Act comes in. That's why the Federal Reserve receives Federal Reserve notes. Upon the tender of a promissory note or bill of exchange from any one of the people of the United States. After you do the 1099-C, and it is sent to the Internal Revenue Service, unless it is rejected as deemed accepted. You can find this information in IRS Tax Topic 453. Now you need to know, what is a promissory note? A promissory note is a written agreement between two parties, in which one party, the borrower, promises to pay back the other party, the lender, a certain amount of money, plus interest, at a specified time. What is the Federal Reserve Act? The Federal Reserve Act is a federal law that establishes the Federal Reserve System, which is the central bank of the United States. The Federal Reserve Act also gives the Federal Reserve the authority to issue Federal Reserve notes, which are legal tender in the United States. What are the provisions of 12 U.S.C. 412 and 414? Section 412 states that a promissory note and/or draft and/or bill of exchange is collateral, security and tender for the loan which a U.S. borrower received. Section 414 states that when the application accompanied by the promissory note is accepted by the Federal Reserve, Federal Reserve notes are issued to the local Federal Reserve agent, the borrower's obligation is hereby deemed fulfilled. How a promissory note can be used as collateral for a loan. The application process. To use a promissory note as collateral for a loan, you will need to apply for a loan from a financial institution. When you apply for a loan, the financial institution usually presents you with a copy of your promissory note. The financial institution will then review your requests along with your promissory note and determine whether it is acceptable as collateral for the loan. The local Federal Reserve agent, i.e., the bank or financial institution whereby a U.S. borrower makes application for a loan, will then have the U.S. borrower sign a power of attorney, oftentimes mixed in with a bunch of other papers. And this power of attorney will grant the financial institution irrevocable authority to act and do whatever is necessary. This can be found in the Federal Reserve Operating Circular 10 Appendix No. 3. What is the role of the Federal Reserve? If the financial institution approves your loan, it will sell your promissory note to the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve will then issue Federal Reserve notes to the financial institution. The issuance of Federal Reserve notes. Federal Reserve notes are legal tender in the United States. This means that they can be used to pay for goods and services. Federal Reserve notes are also backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. How to reclaim property that has been repossessed. What is the bankruptcy process respecting repossessions? If your property has been repossessed, you may be able to reclaim it through the bankruptcy process. To do this, you will need to file for bankruptcy under Chapter 7 or Chapter 13 of the Bankruptcy Code. Chapter 7 Bankruptcy. If you file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, the court will sell your unnecessary property and use the proceeds to pay off your secured creditors. Which is why you list the property as unsecured. Chapter 7 bankruptcy is a liquidation bankruptcy, which means that you will lose your secured property, so I'll never list your property associated with a promissory note as secured. Chapter 13 bankruptcy. If you file for Chapter 13 bankruptcy, you will create a repayment plan that will allow you to pay off your debts over time. Chapter 13 bankruptcy is a reorganization bankruptcy, which means that you will be able to keep your property. Please keep in mind, whether to file Chapter 11, Chapter 7, Chapter 13 bankruptcy depends on the circumstances and the specifics of the particular situation. And we are not here to provide all the nuances associated with either. The documentation requirements. Regardless of which chapter of bankruptcy you file under, you will need to document the tender of payment and the approval and/or acceptance of the tender of payment resulting in the obligation of the Federal Reserve to issue Federal Reserve notes to the local Federal Reserve agent as prescribed by Section 414. This documentation will show the court that you have already made a good faith effort to repay your debt. The burden of proof. The burden of proof is on the alleged creditor to prove that Federal Reserve notes were never received so as to document an outstanding debt. If the creditor is unable to meet this burden, the court may order the creditor to return your property. Conclusion. Summary of the key points. A promissory note can be used as collateral for a loan. If your property has been repossessed, you may be able to reclaim it through the bankruptcy process. You will need to document the tender of payment and the approval and/or acceptance of the tender of payment resulting in the obligation of the Federal Reserve to issue Federal Reserve notes to the local Federal Reserve agent as prescribed by Section 414. The burden of proof is on the alleged creditor to prove that Federal Reserve notes were never received so as to document an outstanding debt. Once again, remember that you will always list the property as unsecured. Why? Because it's up to the alleged creditor to prove the debt is still outstanding, and they are the idiots who introduced a promissory note on the record. Introduction of the promissory note on the record shows that your promissory note was accepted and approved. That means they receive Federal Reserve notes, i.e. that they've been paid. This is because the government has stood surety for the repayment of the loan associated with a promissory note, draft and/or bill of exchange. When you list the property as unsecured, you will explain that the promissory note was the collateral and the security for the loan, not your house, your car, your boat, or any of your other properties. And as such, it is a government guarantee or government obligations. An unsecured loan cannot be used to repossess by a non-judicial foreclosure. This is because the Non-Judicial Foreclosure Act, NFA, only applies to secured loans, which are loans that are backed by collateral, such as a house or a car. If you have an unsecured loan, such as a credit card debt or a personal loan, your creditor must go to court to foreclose on your property. Here are some case sites documenting this. In Re Doty, 427 BR 567, Banker. E.D. Mike. 2010, in Re Miller, 416 BR 773, Banker. D. Neb. 2009. In Re Smith, 407 BR 889, Banker.D. Minnesota 2009, in Re Jones, 399 BR 733, Banker. ND Ohio 2008, in Re Brown, 392 BR 718, Banker. SD Florida 2008. In each of these cases, the court held that the NFA did not apply to unsecured loans. The courts reasoned that the NFA was intended to streamline the foreclosure process for secured loans, and that there was no need to streamline the foreclosure process for unsecured loans. Remember, when you got your loan, it was not for a home, the home was antecedent to the loan. The loan approval came first, then you located a home, and there was a seller involved, and not the bank but a third party. And as such, this was a personal loan and is deemed an unsecured loan. Please note the following. The Non-Judicial Foreclosure Act, NFA, does not apply to unsecured loans. An unsecured loan cannot be used to repossess by a non-judicial foreclosure. Remember, when you got your loan, it was not for a home, the home was antecedent to the loan. Everyone needs to stop allowing themselves to be treated in the manner in which these agencies continue to operate. Always challenge every debt. Go back over this presentation so that you will know what to say. Stand on your square. Go over those cases that the system just told you, and understand your loan was a consumer credit transaction. Pull out your Truth in Lending Act statement, and notice that it was for credit and not for cash or Federal Reserve notes. And since your promissory note was the collateral and the security for the loan was unsecured according to the Non-Judicial Foreclosure Act. The same applies to the home loans, student loans, car loans. These are all consumer loan transactions. This is but a short and brief tutorial to help you come to a better understanding of your position when faced with repossession. I hope this information has been helpful. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to contact me.